Hey guys, what's up? My name's Sam. I'm talking to you today about the 2022-2023 Tundras, and specifically we're talking today about the rear air suspension option coming from factory from Toyota for these trucks. Love this truck. I got a lot of problems with it, but I still love this truck. I'm super happy with my purchase. If you're thinking about buying one, I support that decision. However, there's some things that you should know. And if you already own one of these, you probably already know the issue I'm gonna bring up, and it's the rough ride of the air suspension in the rear. Now, Toyota's come out with a service bulletin about this. They don't have a fix, let me rephrase. They have a fix for it, but they actually don't fix the problem, right? If you've ever dealt with Toyota service, it's not a fix. They're skirting the problem and they're putting a Band-Aid on this. And we'll get to that in a bit, but let me tell you about this problem, all right? The service bulletin admits to the fact that the Tundras that come factory with an air ride system have a rough ride. Now, the reason for that, and we'll talk about it, is the suspension is meant to sit with a rake, just like all normal trucks, right? You got your F-150, Silverado, all the trucks for the last few years coming out, they have a little bit of a rake. So you put some load on them, drops down, and it's still sitting level, and you're good. Because when your truck's under load, that's when you want to make sure that it doesn't have a Cali lean, it's not sitting, straight on the axle. You don't want any of that, right? And when they added the air suspension in the back, they didn't redesign anything. They just threw on airbags, right? So what ended up happening is when I first looked at a Tundra that's stock with no air ride, I was noticing probably about 5 inches, 6 inches of travel, maybe more, even 4 to 6 inches of travel in the rear. But when they throw the airbags on with the auto leveling feature that comes from factory, which is actually really good, I shouldn't use quotes there. It's actually a really nice system. I really like it. But when it comes with the auto leveling feature, right, they throw the airbags on instead of the coils. They take the coils out, put in airbags. They don't change anything else. They add that sensor, and then they adjust the sensor to get the truck to level. So if you can see right now, my truck's sitting very level, all right? And that's because of this linkage that I'm going to show you in a second here, this linkage in the back. And that's something that you can adjust. Stock without a lift, without any extra parts, you can adjust how that rear end sits, because that linkage is adjustable from factory. So throw on the airbags, they adjust that linkage, and they tell the truck, hey, this is level, all right? Now, there's one sensor, it's on the driver's side with the linkage. There's not one on the passenger side, it's only one sensor. Super, super simple system, which I actually really like that they kept that simple. It's great. The problem is they take that 4 to 6 inches of travel, throw on the airbags, drops it down, because there was a rake that's not level, drops it down. So then when you have the finished product, which I bought, and coming out of the dealership with 0 miles or 2 miles or whatever it was, it had 1 inch, 1 to 2 inches of travel in the rear. I went over the first little bump, first speed bump, boom, I'm bottoming out the rear end. And that's just unacceptable. If you're spending all this money on a truck, it's gotta be dialed in. You can't be bottoming out and hitting your bump stops, just going over a speed bump. I mean, come on, Toyota, what are you guys thinking? So, super unhappy with that. I brought it back into the service department. And this is a terrible story, and it just pains me to tell it, but I brought it in. I asked them, hey, just advise me what you guys are going to do. I don't even want you guys to do anything. Just don't touch the truck. I just want you to check and advise and tell me what you're going to do to solve this problem, because you guys said it's a problem. They had a service bulletin out about it. So Toyota's admitted, hey, this is a problem. There's a rough ride in the Air Equipped Tundras. So I asked them, I said, hey, what are you guys going to do? The advisor, she said, hey, I can't tell you. I'm gonna have to ask the service manager, and I'll get back to you. Leave your truck here, and we'll call you. So a couple hours later, they call me up. They say, hey, your truck's ready. I'm like, my truck's ready. I told you not to work on it. What do you mean my truck's ready? And they're like, oh, I'm so sorry. You're right. It does say here, check and advise. We fixed it. And I was like, okay, well, that's fine. Let me come in, talk to you. So I come in, I talked to him. I said, okay, what'd you guys do to fix it? Sure you guys can guess. They just adjusted the linkage. That took them 5 hours, by the way. 5 hours to adjust the rear linkage. It's one bolt. It's one bolt. Just on a little slide. They adjusted the linkage to give the rear end a rake and add some air to the rear bags. Now, effectively, I will give them this. It does get rid of the rough ride. So if you have an Air Equipped truck and you're not towing a whole bunch and you're just sick of the rough ride, you can do this in your driveway. All right, I'll show you the linkage. You can adjust that very quickly. It takes a couple minutes. And that'll give you some air in the rear bags, trick the truck into thinking that a little bit of a rake is actually level, and that'll fix your rough ride. But the problem with that is when you put this truck under load, it now thinks that the rake's position is level. So if you put this truck under load, it then adds air to the airbags and it gives it raked position when you're towing a 8,000, 10,000 pound trailer, and you don't want that. That's unsafe. You want to have a level truck when you're towing, right? You don't want to have it raked. So anyway, so I was trying to explain to the service guy. I was like, hey, so I asked for the manager. I was like, hey, can I talk to your manager and talk to him about this? This is unacceptable. The guy I was talking to was like, I don't understand what's wrong. Like, what's wrong with that? There's no problem with the way we fixed it. This is what Toyota is putting out. So let me talk to your guys' manager. So I talked to the manager and I'm like, hey, so this truck's got air suspension. Your service technician just adjusted the sensor to trick the truck into thinking, that ride is level. And when I put it under load, it's gonna be unsafe. That's not a fix. And you know what he said to me? This Toyota service advisor said, all we can do for you, sir, is return it to stock. We do not work on aftermarket parts. And I said, aftermarket parts? This truck came with air suspension from the factory. And he says, nope, Toyota has never made a air suspension for any truck. Never done it. That's not something we put out. So then I had to call over a salesman to tell the manager of the service department, hey, we actually make air suspensions for the Tundra. We actually do that. And we work on them. And as the service manager, I get if you don't understand every little inner working, every single piece of all your vehicles, but come on, you gotta put some kind of effort in to know what's going on in your service department, at least in my opinion. And at least before you're telling a customer what you do and you can and you can't work on, you gotta know what you're talking about. Don't make shit up to your customers. That really ticked me off. So I told him, I was like, hey, no, this came from factory. I'll show you the sticker that says air suspension is a feature on this truck that's been added. But anyway, after that whole argument, he's all we can do for you is just readjust that sensor and put it back to level, but you're gonna have a rough ride. It's gonna be back to the way it was. That's all we can do for you. Nothing else can be done. And I kind of fought him on it. I tried to figure out if there's any other thing they can do for me, and that's it. That's all Toyota was gonna do, at least for me. Let me know if you guys have a Tundra and you guys bring it in and they do something else for you, let me know, because I'd love to hear about it. Or if you have anything else that you brought your truck in or your Toyota vehicle in and had an issue with their service department, I wanna hear about it. We'll talk about it. So please, drop a comment, let's talk about it. But yeah, so it hurt my heart. So I left the service department all bummed out, tail between my legs, but I found a solution. All right, it's not perfect, but it's pretty great. So, like I said, I got the 2-inch STT Ready Lift kit on this truck, all right, for the Air Equipped trucks. Now it gives you a 2-inch spacer in the front. Not stoked on that. The 2-inch spacer, obviously, if you're into trucks at all, you understand why a spacer is not great. Ruins your front end geometry. Gives it's not the best. If you're just trying to do it cheap, it's fine, whatever. But it just ruins your geometry. You're not going to get as good of a ride as with buying a new coil system if you're looking for raising it up in the front end. And that's really the only reason, or the only way to fix this problem from Toyota is to raise the front end, right? Inherently, because it's supposed to come with a rake, the truck is designed to sit with that 4 inches, 5 inches, 6 inches of travel, with or without the airbags, right? That's why it's designed to sit. Otherwise, those bump stops are going to be popping off the axle. So what you need to do is you need to raise the front end. So I plan on doing that with coilovers. I don't have the money for it right away. So what I wanted to do was buy this kit mainly for what it comes with for the rear end, which we're going to talk about in a second. But it gave me 2 inches of the front, which allowed me to put on these 35s with the methods. These are 17-inch rim methods. I got Falcon, Wild Peaks on there. Super happy with those tires. We can talk about that in another video. But the 2 inches in the front, which is great. And then what it did is it allowed me to adjust that sensor in the rear to give me that 2 extra inches. So now I had effectively 3 to 4 inches of suspension travel in the rear. Honestly, it was perfect. I didn't bottom out at all. I just put on the spacer in the front. I didn't put on the rear end part of that kit yet. Drove it around. I was happy with it. It rode fantastic. It was OEM. It's how it should have came from factory. 2 inches in the front, left the rear alone, just adjusted that linkage to bring up and add some air to the rear. So if you're thinking about, hey, all I need to do, I like the truck as it is, I just want to get rid of this rough ride, the best thing to do, even though the rough ride is in the rear suspension, raise the front end, right? That's your fix. Now, what I did, and what I'm planning on doing, I should say, is I added a spacer to the rear. So the STT kit from ReadyLift, the 2 inch, comes with a 2 inch spacer for the rear. I added that on. It still has a little bit of a rough ride. It gave me a little bit more travel. I'm not sitting at like 1 inch, I'm sitting more at like 2.5 inches of travel, if that. But what that effectively does is when I buy coils for the front, and I'm gonna put them at like 3.5, 3 inches, what it's going to do is it's going to keep the rear suspension in that normal operating range that the airbags were designed to operate at, so that there's not a whole bunch of pressure in those bags creating a rough ride because they're extended so much once I put that front end, right? So now I have 2 inches space, 2 inch spacer in the back, the whole kit's installed, 2 inches in the front. It's riding kind of like it did stock out of the factory. Still got a little bit of a rough ride, but once I get those coils, and I'll keep you guys updated, and we'll do a video when I get those coils. But once I get those coils, I'll have to adjust it in the back. It'll bring it up a little bit. I'm gonna get that decent amount of travel. I think it should be around 4 inches of travel without hitting the bump stops with the airbags. So I think that'll be more than enough to be comfortable. So let's get into the truck. I'm gonna show you guys what we got under there, all right? Linkage. All right, so right now we're looking at the driver's side airbag. This is the airbag casing here. So you see the airbag here. This is the spacer that I put in. It's a 2 inch spacer. Once again, STT 2 inch spacer lift from ReadyLift. Super happy with it. And then this here is the linkage, right? So you have it connecting here to one of the 4 links on the rear arms, the rear trailing arms here. The linkage that comes up to the body, and then there's a sensor right up here at the top of that linkage that tells the truck whether to add air or let some out. So you can adjust this linkage at the top, and there's also a adjustment right there as well. So this can be adjusted. So when I went to the dealership and they quote unquote fixed my suspension system, all they did was just adjust that bolt. They didn't do anything else. All right, so super unhappy with that. But this is that linkage system that I'm talking about. There's not one on the other side. There's only this one, and that's it. Okay, so let me get out from underneath this truck and I'll show you some more. All right, guys, one other thing I wanted to talk about, I want to go over the button selection here. I'm sure you guys probably already know this. It's got the auto leveling feature we were talking about. This is how it works from the inside. I got a couple complaints on how that system is designed if you wanted to adjust it from neutral. So from, if you wanted to raise it or lower it from that neutral position, you're not going to be able to drive with it in that position that you selected. Even in the manual mode for the selection, it's going to automatically, I think after you go above like 31 miles an hour or something like that, 30 miles an hour, it's going to automatically drop back to that neutral position to keep the truck leveled up. I just like to have the ability to keep it where I want it while driving, which Toyota doesn't give you that option. So, bummer there. But anyway, I hope you guys liked the video. If you guys have any experiences dealing with some of these new cars, or any terrible experiences even with old cars dealing with Toyota service, please let me know down in the comments. We're gonna be talking about the wireless charger next. I got that. I was super excited about that when I bought this truck. I was so stoked. Such a disappointment. Such a disappointment. So please please stick around, watch my next video when I put that out on the wireless charger. I'm sure that's gonna get some of you guys fired up because I know I was fired up about it. And it's not just with the Toyota, the Tundra, it's with the Prius, the Tacoma, and a lot of other vehicles that come with a wireless charger. So stay tuned.